A partially torn ACL and a top NBA draft prospect? You bet I still want him. Except for one little thing.
You are Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Mountain basketball! Woohoo! Okay, it's not quite it, but it's there. Hi, I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. Today on the show, Nikola Topic, partially torn ACL, top 10 draft pick. We talked about it earlier this week. We now know, kind of knew, what the situation is. Do you draft Nikola Topic, 6'6", partially torn ACL, likely not going to play next year if that's the case, particularly if he has a surgery. Even then, limited next year probably, because you've got to be careful. Would you still draft him? We'll touch on that and dig into it. The hottest new draft prospect that is out there. Would you pull what's the story on him? What's the impact on that? We'll get into that. Plus, an interesting metric I found on a guy who's written like a random draft book and has a combine performance index. His name is Patrick Tursich, and we'll look at what it is and decide whether we think it has any value or not. Plus, we'll hit some NBA rumors and a preview all coming up. As I mentioned, I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider, and this is Locked On Jazz. It's free and available on all podcasting apps, so please subscribe. We'll give you your money's worth, we promise. And we are available on YouTube. Join the chat group. Thumbs up. I want to know, would you draft Nikola Topic top 10, even with a partially torn ACL? Give me a thumbs up if you would on that. Also, hit the bell button, and then we'll be notified every time we go start it. All right, today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Oh, Game Time. Game Time episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download that Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Wait 1 second. Sorry, Kobe. I grumbled on Game Time there because you all are too big of Red Hot Chili Peppers fans. Red Hot Chili Peppers was at the formerly known as the USANA last night, and I was monitoring Game Time for 3 straight days trying to get a ticket that dropped under the level I wanted to pay, and it never did, and I didn't get to see Flea, and I'm kind of bummed and now regretful. All right, let's get to the big story of the day. Nikola Topic, the big story of the day is mountain basketball. Let's start there. This is old. That's all I had for those on YouTube. All right, the Jazz have rebranded. Few quick thoughts. Just quickly, because one, I didn't actually hate the yellow. The concept behind the yellow to me was that we had a Crayola box of colors over the last decades, had no definition, and needed to do something to define us differently than everybody else. That if you saw a color, you thought Utah Jazz. Well, I actually thought that kind of worked because I'd go places and see a yellow and be like, oh, are they a Jazz fan? But it just never took traction, right? People just never bought in, and then the full yellow was just too much. So, and it was clear that it didn't have any tie to our history. So the concept was right. I didn't actually hate it. This is done really, really well. It really feels great and looks right, feels right, ties into who we are. I think it's going to tie into the hockey team, it sounds like. I really like the blue. I think it brings a nice element to it. The black uniforms are awesome, which we'll see starting January 1st. Those are pretty cool. It just really feels better. And that's really a part of this whole thing. The logic behind the first rebrand, I got it. It just didn't feel, I think that's the best way to say it. It didn't feel right. This feels right. The purple feels right. My concern on purple this whole time has been the Kings are purple and black and the Lakers are purple and gold, and that purple's kind of taken. But if we can pull off kind of this purple with the light blue element of it that kind of matters, then I think, and have the black element, it's good. I also love the state uniform, or the state logo. I know the note is who we are. I love the state, what I call the state of basketball logo. I really like it. Utah's state feature is unique. The basketball fits perfectly in it. you see it, you think Utah. I love that. I'm glad to see that sticking around as well. And then frankly, I said this and we'll move on. Like, I think the purple's great. It looks awesome in uniforms. It doesn't look great on people. Particularly yeah. So I really like the fact we're still going to have some black and white you can wear, some black with purple accent, some maybe light blue with a purple accent. I kind of like that. So, all right. I think everyone's got to be fired up about it. It feels so good. Good job, Ben Barnes. Good job, the crew. It feels really good, I think. And that's exciting because the other just didn't feel right? Like even when, yeah, you got it. I don't need to tell you, you know. All right. This is fascinating. Kind of thought this was what was going on earlier this week we talked about. So Nikola Topic is 6'6", 6'7", 230 pounds. In the U18s, he was the European MVP. He's a point guard. He went to the Adriatic League this year, which is a lower level league. He averaged 19.7 assists at 18 years old. His dad's a former great player. He played for the Yugoslavian Olympic team that won in 1996, won the silver in 96, and he played for the Yugoslavian national team in 97 and 98. And then obviously now it's the Civil War struck, and they have Civil War struck in 90, but they have different teams since then. He's got great size for a point guard. He's got great pace change. He's a below the rim player who's a pretty good finisher for below the rim. Defensively, we'll have to see over time. He's a European. Like, we always worry about them defensively. It's in every scouting report you've ever read about a European. We worry about their scouting report. I thought he reminded me of Goran Dragic. I would love Goran Dragic. He plays hard. Goran Dragic played hard. We'll see if that was the player who I looked at when I watch him, I see a right-handed Goran Dragic. Now, he injured his knee at the end of the Adriatic League, so we didn't get to see him in Euro basketball, and he just injured his knee again, and it's a partially torn ACL. What is a partially torn ACL? From my conversations with orthopedic surgeons, not hard to find around here, and internet searching, but not being a doctor, there are three things on ACL. There's a sprain level 1, there's a sprain level 2, and there's a sprain 3. 3 is the complete tear. 2 is the ambiguous middle ground, and 1 is just kind of a slight thing. Basically, there's no definition of what you do here, depending on your pain and your instability. Now, 18-year-old kid about to try to play in the NBA, I find it hard to believe that we're running around with a partially torn ACL and calling it good. I would suspect that an 18-year-old, I'm not a doctor, I didn't stay at a Holiday Inn Express, so let's be careful here, but just intuitive logic is there's no, like when you talking about, oh, you have a partially torn ACL, we don't really need to repair it. You can cycle, you can run. Those are all straight ahead things. But if you're trying to be a world-class NBA basketball player, I'm going to guess that that's either an extensive rehab or a surgery. Okay, let's address that. Let's assume for a second, worst case scenario, he has to have a surgery. Now, this gets to the next thing. That's 12 months in the NBA now. Somebody just came back earlier than 12 months off an ACL. It was like the first player to come back earlier than 12 months on an ACL in like 8-10 years. Call it 12 months. We would draft him end of June. We do some tests on him, probably July surgery, and he's probably plays again in October of his second year. Does not play his first year. You okay with that? Give me your thoughts in the comment section if you're on YouTube. Hit me on Twitter at X. At DLock09. Would you be willing to draft someone who doesn't play their first year? My answer to that is absolutely. Rookies aren't good. The track record shows that you're actually better off redshirting them anyway. Michael Porter Jr. is another name. We talked about Ben Simmons, Nick Collison, Blake Griffin. If you look through the track record, those players that sit out a year actually might be better off. So it's all good. I don't have a problem if he doesn't play the first year. Here's an interesting little note on this, because this is the biggest question on the ACL. Does an ACL make you get less good? In 2021, Stanford University researchers studied 50 different metrics of every NBA player since 1980. That's 44 years ago. Our science has gotten better on what the impact was. They had a 97-player pool. The researchers dwindled it down to 50, excluding players who played in another league who had previous ACL tears. And the 50 metrics included common season-level performance statistics like minutes played, player efficiency, field goals, et cetera, et cetera. And the team of researchers developed an algorithm to match ACL injuries to players with 2 other players of similar age and playing style who did not tear their ACL. Okay. So, for example, Ron Harper tore his ACL in 1990, and they compared him to Paul Pressey and Scottie Pippen, which they misspelled in the article. The researchers came up with the following discovery. And that is players who were able to make it back to the NBA after their ACL tear came back at a similar level of performance to what you'd expect from a player who never had an ACL in the first place. Players with a high career driving tendencies experienced ACL tears at a higher rate than lower drive players. Okay, well, that's exactly what we just had happen here. And the modern NBA is increasingly, basically like run through this. And the answer is that basically there does not seem to be a significant performance change in how a player plays after an ACL. So, would you draft Nikola Topic with the 10th pick of the NBA draft? Well, if the answer is I'm not drafting because of an ACL, I'm not there with you. Because the fact of the matter is, it's like a 50% chance we're getting a player that actually contributes at 10 anyway. But I have a concern. Nikola Topic is a 29% three-point shooter, a 32% three-point shooter last in the season. And while its free throw shooting is 87%, a below-the-rim point guard who drives to the basket, who plays in that style, who doesn't have a three-point shot is a problem. So it has nothing to do with an ACL, but there's already a large concern of whether Nikola Topic becomes an NBA player, because if he shoots 29% from three, he's never getting off the bench, and then he's a non-rotation NBA player regardless of his ACL. So that's the question I need answered on him, not whether he has an ACL injury or not. There's a new hottest player in the NBA draft, and it has a big impact on what the Jazz might be able to do on draft night. That's next on Locked On Jazz. Today's edition of Locked On Jazz is brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. PrizePicks.com/LockedOnNBA, and you get a first deposit match up to $100. That's right, PrizePicks.com/LockedOnNBA, and you get your first. You get a deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, it's the #1 fantasy sports app with more than 5 million members. You pick more or less on 2 or more players for a shot to win up to $100 of cash. It's Prize Picks. You could turn $100 into $1,000 in any single game watching your favorite sports this summer. You pick Prize Picks lineup in less than 60 seconds. You just need to pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stats you're locked into. Prize Picks, have a lot of fun with it. And $10 deposit, receive an instant $10, or go $100, get a $100 match. It's all at prizepicks.com, available in more than 30 states across the country. Prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. That's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Today's show is also brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app today. Use the code LockedOnNBA to get $20 off your first purchase. I've also been looking at Sarah McLachlan tonight at USANA. Love Sarah McLachlan, but NBA Finals wins out on that one. And I'm not going to Sarah McLachlan by myself. My wife's out of town. That seems weird. Sarah McLachlan's a date show. Game Time's great. Okay, I didn't get my tickets yesterday on Game Time, but it was great. And here's why. Because one of the tickets I almost bought for Game Time had a little mark on it. I looked at it, had a restricted view. And suddenly I realized, I don't want that. I'd be blocked by the setup. And that's exactly what Game Time does for you. It gives you the shot, gives you all-in pricing. There wasn't any joke. I'd set my number of what I was willing to spend to go to see Flea and Red Hot Chili Peppers last night, and the number just never got under it. It's not Game Time's fault, but it was a great system to be able to look at. And then there's the times like Matt Moore, our Locked On Nuggets host, and his wife, they sit there every night and they look at Avalanche games, and they wait and see till the price goes down, and then they grab their Avalanche tickets and they go to the game. It's absolutely fabulous. The Game Time app does it all for you. So right now, go to Game Time. Download the Game Time app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA, and get your $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. And why do you guys all like Flea so much? I wanted to go. Thanks so much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. Have you made the switch to the first ever 24/7 channel of Locked On Sports Today on YouTube. It's available for you 24/7 on YouTube, going from one of the biggest stories to the next. Maybe the Lakers and UConn today are going to be on Locked On Sports Today. It's also available on Amazon Fire TV. Go grab it. Coach Hurley, the possibility of UConn's head coach going to the Lakers. See what's going on. By the way, today on Locked On Sports Today, right around 9 a.m. hour time, the Mavericks will be on. Shortly thereafter, the Celtics will be on around 9:30, and then Mavericks and Celtics crossovers. There are two of them. Will start at 3 o'clock. Maybe mark your calendar down for that. 3 o'clock today on Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and Amazon Fire will be the Celtics Mavericks crossovers. There's two of them, preparing you for the 6:30 start tonight. Tajon Salon is a 6'10", 7'2" wingspan wing player out of France who's come out of nowhere. The top two picks of the draft are already Frenchmen and Victor Wembanyama in the league. And here is a player Tajon Salon, who got cut as a U16 and a U17 player from the French national team. He's 6'10". He's got a great body, 6'9", 6'10". Pretty good instincts on how to play. I would say he doesn't have a huge vertical jump, but at 6'9", 6'10", I'm not sure it matters. His body moves. He's big and strong, and his body moves terrifically. He's stunningly bad at the rim. Like stunningly bad at the rim, which is kind of surprising in some ways for a guy that's that size with that strength. It doesn't totally make sense that would be the case on him. I'm not sure why that is, frankly. It's a little funky to see that's how he is, and how he, that he's struggling, that's his kind of approach. But here's the thing about him. His body is great. He plays hard, like really, really hard. And while Zachary Richard is the number one pick of the draft right now, and that seems to be the case, I'm going to go out on a limb here that there is going to be a moment between now and the end of this draft where Salon is being talked about as the number one pick of the draft. And here's why. When I watch the two of them, one, Salon is younger by a little bit. He's 18.8, and Zachary is 19.2, so just a tiny bit. One's 6'8", 202, and the other is 6'9", 203, 205. They're very similar. I think there's going to be a moment here where people look at Salon and think he has more upside. Now, whether that becomes whether that becomes who he is at the end, but he has a lack of a handle. But you know what? I watched Zachary. He can't beat anybody off the bounce either. Neither of these guys can beat anyone off the bounce, which is crazy for a top 1, 2, or 3, or 4 pick. That's where this draft is so weird. But he plays really hard, has good defensive instincts. There's some stuff to like about him. Here's his numbers, and we'll compare the two of them numbers-wise. In transition, just in the 43rd percentile overall. So that kind of gets to our, remember, transition, isolation are the things we look at to see. He really did almost no isolation play at all for Cholet last year. Those are our athletic numbers. So he's not a great rim finisher. He's not a great, on layups, he was in the 26th percentile. He shot 52% on layups. This is the big little bit red flag on him. Now, the next thing is he doesn't run the pick and roll much. He's 6'8", so he's kind of just a wing spot up player. And his shooting percentage was in the 28th percentile. This is another one of these below 30 percentile. His catch and shoot guy was in the 54th. His unguarded was the 15th, but his dribble was on the 16th. So I don't know that he would stay up there. But this is the hot guy in the draft. He's being moved up to 3 in some circumstances. I think he's going to continue to be the hot name and the in vogue name that everybody hasn't seen quite as much as they'd like. And so they begin to wonder about him. On the number 1 pick of the draft, Rasheer was 73rd percentile 58th percentile in transition also. in isolation game, when I watched him, I saw none. He literally did none all year long. 3 isolation plays all year long. And then his rim finishing isn't any better. He's in the 38th percentile and 55% on layup. So these two guys are very similar at 6'8", non-elite athletes that were about to go 1, 2, or 3 in this NBA draft. You get into play types, and Rocher is not a pick and roll ball handler either. He ran a grand total of 30 pick and rolls all of last year. Very similar. Neither of them did. From a spot up standpoint, he's a little bit better at the 56th percentile. On catch and shoots, he's in the 81st percentile, which changes a little bit. His dribble off the bounce in the 46th. But that's the one thing you start to look at. Salon is a little bigger, moves a little better, plays a little harder. I think there's a chance he jets up. Why is this important to the Utah Jazz? Well, it's interesting because this draft is just crazy. And I also am just a little curious on where everyone's just totally bored of Alex Sarr. And the issue on Alex Sarr, I guess, is he hasn't played that hard. So here's, and we'll see when the next mock draft comes out. The latest mock draft from Kevin O'Connor came out. He has Rashard's number 1, Alex Sarr's 2, Donovan Clingan 3 to Houston, Matthias Bazulius at 4 to San Antonio, which I just don't see. And now Reed Sheppard at 5. The feeling I've brought up on this show is in the last year's the Jazz could have gotten to 5. And anyone else. The last thing the Pistons need with Jaden Ivey and Cade Cunningham is Reed Sheppard. Reed Sheppard starts to get at 5, and I think he's there for the taking. And that is exciting to me. If we walked out with Reed Sheppard, I would take that. Or if the Pistons take Reed Sheppard, what are we unloading for Jaden Ivey? Because then they're going Cade Cunningham, Reed Sheppard. And they've already got a Sewer Thompson. Sheppard is by far the best shooter in the draft, and the Pistons can't shoot. But it's got, and Trajan Langdon, who can shoot, is their new GM. Maybe they wouldn't move it, but they would be stockpiled with too many players. This is the problem when you start drafting at this level. Castle's 6. Salon, who we just talked about, is at 7 on Kevin O'Connor. Topic is at 8. Khalil Ware now is at 9. And Cody Williams is 10th to the Jazz at taken over Devin Carter. Zach Edey at 12, Dalton Connect at 13, Ron Holland at 14, Rob Dillingham at 15, and Bub Carrington at 16. I'd like to dig into a little bit more of Bub Carrington out of Pittsburgh, by the way. I think he's interesting. But so we're really seeing this draft begin to play out, and the shuffling up front is making an impact. As Reed Sheppard starts to drop to 5, 6, or 7, can we go get him? Does Topic knee injury get him to 10? It only takes 2 teams deciding not to take him because of that. He gets us to us very easily. And otherwise, yeah, we're probably making a decision about Devin Carter, who I really like, Cody Williams, Dalton Connect, Ron Holland, Rob Dillingham. I like Jared McCain an awful lot, who's down at 17. And frankly, I think we're at a point where very early in this draft, 9, it feels like 8, 9 through 17, 18, 19, 20 are all very, very similar. It's interesting. It's really fun, actually. It's going to be a great draft night. We're doing a huge 3-hour show, no commercial breaks on Jazz Plus, by the way, for you. So make sure you grab that. All right. A really unique metric on how everybody performed at the Combine. We'll have that for you, plus an NBA Finals preview next as we continue on Locked on Jazz. This episode of the show is brought to you by BetterHelp. BetterHelp, convenient, flexible online therapy. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA. I view therapy as performance enhancing, right? We go to the gym, we get stronger, we ride mountain bikes because it's beautiful outside, it's good for our mental health, and because we get in better shape. We do all these things. We eat chocolate chip cookies because they're awesome. Oh, that has nothing to do with no, that's performance enhancing for me. I swear I'm going to die, and my tombstone is going to say, enjoyed the most chocolate chip cookies, and you are all going to look at it and be like, oh, he was happy. That's my goal in life. BetterHelp is a way to try to make you get happy. We've all got cycles where we get ourselves in trouble. We know we're not doing the right things. We can't figure out why we keep making the same mistakes. It's pretty clear that there's patterns to our behaviors and patterns we'd like to break, and sometimes we need help on how to break. So that's where therapy comes in. Give BetterHelp a try. BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Fill out a brief questionnaire, get matched to a licensed therapist, and then if you don't like the therapist, you can switch, which is way easier online than in person, because if you can find 2 therapists in your town that are both available, you should play the lottery instead. So go to betterhelp.com/lockedonnba. Get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedonnba. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Are you going to get in on the action for the NBA Finals? Well, or the Stanley Cup Finals? The new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any $5 bet. That's a $150 bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every playoff shot count. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. All right, the obvious two MVPs are Tatum or Doncic. Who is the Andre Iguodala MVP of the playoffs? Who is it going to be? Because Tatum's minus 125. Luka Doncic is plus 210. Is it Jaylen Brown at plus 700? Is it Kyrie at plus 1,800? Those are not Andre Iguodala's, but these are. Derek White plus 3,500 or Drew Holiday plus 10,000. It is FanDuel.com/lockedon. Thanks so much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all podcasting apps, as well as on YouTube. So thank you. Give us a thumbs up. Would you draft Topic in the top 10? All right. Let's see if I can present this for those of you that are on YouTube. I don't know if you're going to be able to see it that well. I'll try to make it a little bigger. All right. This is a guy by the name, and I found it on Reddit. I'm not trying to hide it at all. His name is Hollywood Bags on Reddit. His real name in life is Patrick Tursich. He has a book out on the NBA draft. If you would like to check it out, that's not good. Whatever just happened was not what I wanted. There we go. So he took something called the NBA Combine Performance, and the Combine Performance metric. It is height plus weight plus 3 tests: lane agility, 3/4 sprint, and max vertical leap. And he believes that these parlay into NBA success. That those are the ones that have shown that they parlay toward NBA success. Well, some of this gets pretty interesting if you're a Jazz fan, because the best of the players 6'5" and below was Devin Carter. Now, some of these guys didn't take. Reed Sheppard was in the elite group at 5th. Jacoby Walter a little lower. Isaiah Collier does not come out as an elite athlete. And Jared McCain, who I really, really like and does everything right. And I compared earlier in this draft prospects to Lofa Tutupu, the linebacker who just moves a step faster than everyone, not having all the skills, comes out very low. Okay. I think this is interesting. This is the group that's 6'5" to 6'9". And honestly, one of the questions on Dalton Connect at 6'8" at 22 and a half years old, and probably for some other reasons, is he a good enough athlete? He doesn't test out brilliantly, but he tests out above most of the track. In fact, if you ask somebody just on paper, a young 19-year-old Cody Williams at 6'6", or Dalton Connect at 6'5", who do you think, or Ron Holland, who looks like the most elite athlete you see when you watch him play, who would test out better? You would believe I 100 times would take Ron Holland over Dalton Connect. Pretty fascinating that in this, Dalton Connect tests out as a better combine performance. Now, height, weight is a part of this. Lane agility test, 3/4 sprint, and max vertical jump. That was eye-opening to me. I would take Stephen Castle from watching him play over all of these guys, and he's even lower. So that jumps out to me. Bobby Klintman, who's a guy I'm interested in, the 30th pick, and Justin Edwards both test out very poorly. The Edwards one, to me, really fascinating because he's the freshman out of Kentucky, who I thought to myself, like, maybe he has the Kentucky thing, and the reason he didn't play well last year is a funky team, but the reason he didn't play well might be because he's not a very good athlete. And then on the big guys, I don't know, Messi, if you've seen Messi play, he's an incredible athlete, but he's pretty far off the list. And Khalil Ware is there, and then Donovan Clingan. So anyway, this guy's name is Patrick Tursich, Tursic. He actually has an NBA draft book that's available to be bought at Amazon. Want to give him his due. This is his little metric that, as I said, takes height, weight, lane agility, 3/4 sprint, and max vertical leap. And my takeaways would be that out of the players 6'5" and below, Devin Carter is number 1. And that, interestingly, Jared McCain is really, really low. And like, you know what? If I was deciding between the two players and I believed in these metrics, that would matter to me because they're not close. That Dalton Connect is considerably higher than Cody Williams and Ron Holland, and Stephen Castle is the lowest of the group. Stunning to me. So you can decide whether you believe in this system. Give me your thoughts on YouTube, as well as hitting me on Twitter at X to let me know. All right. NBA Finals preview. The key moments will be any moment in which Al Horford is on the floor with Luka Doncic. I think Boston will try to avoid it, but then that really eliminates Al Horford playing. So keep an eye on any minutes in which Al Horford is on the floor with Luka Doncic and how often Al Horford ends up guarding Luka Doncic. That's one. The second thing to me is I think we have forgotten that the Celtics have been completely dominant with the fifth best differential of any team in the history of the NBA, and that they're really are very, very good. Okay, I think they're getting a short stick right now. Open threes to me are going to determine the series. During the year, these two teams took the most three-point shots with a defender between 4 to 6 feet away. During the season, Boston averaged 37 threes a game, where the defender was 4 or more feet away, 37. And during the playoffs, they've only gotten 34. Jason Kidd against the Jazz a few years ago and to other teams have taken away open threes. I don't know how he does it while protecting the rim, but that's something that's been a signature of Boston in their rotations. That to me is going to be a huge number to watch. How many threes with a defender not inside 4 feet does Boston get in the series? When in the regular season, Boston got 37 and they made 40%. Good night now. Dallas during the regular season, and this is a little skewed because they kind of cut their threes down. They got 34 per game, and they're not as good a shooting team. They made 37%. In the playoffs, they've only gotten 29 open threes a game. They've been at the rim, some of those kind of things. And they're only shooting 37%. If Boston gets 4 or 5 more open threes again and are better shooters, they win this series fairly easily. That to me is the number I'm going to keep an eye on. How many threes does each team get 4 to 6 feet? And then can PJ Washington, Derek Jones, and Josh Green, who are not as good as shooters as Derek White, Drew Holiday, Peyton Pritchard, Kristaps Porzingis, make those threes? That's the question to me of the NBA Finals. Luka and Kyrie Irving, I think, will get Dallas better looks. I just don't know if they're good enough to knock them down. That is Locked On Jazz today. Thanks so much for tuning in. Hope you're doing great. We'll do a Ask LOJ because you guys are so great at them. Tomorrow I'll throw out some questions. But email me if you've got one to at dlock09@gmail.com or hit me on X at dlock09 and send me your questions now. We send you now to the first ever 24/7 national sports channel, Locked On Sports Today, available on YouTube as well as on Amazon Fire. If you're on audio, go over to YouTube now to Locked On Sports Today.